Ahoy, and welcome in to another exciting episode of Not Allowed to Die, where I, Dan Magler, social worker and life enthusiast, answer your questions about mental health and talk about dilemmas I'm seeing in my practice, both as a school social worker and a therapist in private practice. Alongside me, as always, is Mariska, the three-toothed Patterdale Terrier, and right now she's resting. She's feeling very calm and relaxed. And we're kind of opposites right now because I'm geeking out a little bit because I'm so excited. Today we have a guest and someone that I'm a big fan of, an enthusiast about his podcast and all his topics. We've got Andy Grant, and he has been helping people for over a decade as a best-selling author, award-winning speaker, transformational energy coach, healer, suicide prevention advocate, and host of the Real Men Feel podcast. He holds certificates in positive psychology, the Awaken coaching system, Akashic records, life activation, and other leadership programs and energy work modalities. Known as the king of authenticity, Andy's the founder of Real Men Feel, a movement encouraging men to come out of the emotional closet. Andy has been producing and hosting Real Men Feel podcasts since February of 2016. As a survivor of multiple suicide attempts, Andy knows how low we as human beings can feel, and he's committed to helping people realize how magnificent life is meant to be. His Amazon bestseller, Still Here: How to Succeed in Life After Failing at Suicide, has helped people around the globe and includes everything he wished he knew at a younger age. And Andy, I feel in some ways that I'm wasting an opportunity because today I feel like I have Tom Brady on, and instead of asking about football, I'm asking about what life is like in Tampa Bay. But at the same time, because Andy, like Real Men Feel, I am so passionate about how male socialization impacts mental health and things like that. But today, like I was listening to Andy's podcast. And I mean, talk about the king of authenticity. He spoke recently on one of his podcasts, and I encourage all of you to go check it out, about this feeling of dealing with recurrent depression. And after I heard that, I said, I've got to get Andy on and talk about, because so many of my clients, they experience this problem of they've beaten depression once and they think that they're going to be done with it. And when it comes back, this sense of defeat and shame and whatnot. And so when I heard you speak about that, I was like, as much as I want to talk into it, maybe you'll come back again on the podcast another time, but I really need to hear about that. So Andy, just thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and anything you want to share right off the bat?
No, I'm really glad to be here, and I'm glad my recent. I'm glad my recent darkness can somehow serve others, because that's really what finally made me open up and kind of come back to life. I really took 8 months off from doing anything, and it was not a planned 8 months. This was just apathy that got its own momentum, and just nothingness and withdrawal. And when I speak, when I write, I can tell people that, if you've ever seriously considered suicide, that thought will always be in the back of your mind, waiting for like a weak moment to come up again. Yet, when it happens to me, I'm like, I should have known better. Why I'm supposed to be better than normal people? It's another reason to pummel myself. So, being a human is tough. And getting depressed, it doesn't mean something's wrong. It doesn't mean a mental illness. It can be. That's the absolute best reaction we have to our current temporary circumstances. And a mistake I often make is taking current temporary circumstances and projecting them to never change. I will always feel this low. Nothing will ever get better. And that's what keeps me in my worst place for months longer than it needs to be.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you mentioned is, or have implied, just because a person has suicidal thoughts does not make them broken. That suicidal thoughts, in some ways, can be really a logical response to feeling like I've got all this suffering and I don't know how to solve it, and so it's like an exit sign, and maybe and hopefully we'll never walk out that door, but it's a feeling that, like, hey, maybe. So this idea that we're not, it doesn't mean because a person has suicidal thoughts that they need to be on a lot of meds or whichever else. So any thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I really developed this pattern that my suicidal thoughts were my survival mechanism. It was my default. I didn't know how to deal with something I didn't like, except for going down that route. And what amazed me growing up, I'd end up in a mental hospital after making an attempt. And soon I realized, I feel good in these hospitals where I can talk about things. And when I was growing up, nobody talked about suicide. It was only in a mental hospital did I meet anyone else that talked openly about it. So that's part of why I openly talk about it now, because it does not mean you're crazy. But I realized, I land on my feet pretty well. And then in my early 20s, a depressive episode after college, and I went into a hospital voluntarily without making an attempt. And I thought, well, I'm such an adult now. Look at me. I'm so mature. I can ask for help. But even as an adult, without making attempts, there was something about I have no idea what to do. So I'm going to take this suicidal action. I'm going to pursue this thought, and at least I'm doing something. And it brought this distorted sense of relief. So what I encourage everyone, do what works, right? That longing for an exit, you said it means whatever we're dealing with, we want it to end. And the distorted thinking is that what I want to end is me. And that's simply not true. I don't believe that's true for anybody.
Well, and so sometimes though we say we do what works, and it works for maybe 3 years, 6 years, 8 years, and then in your experience, is it that it stops working? Is it that, or is it that we stop engaging in the hygiene that it takes to keep it working, or is it a combination of things? Like, what is your experience about that?
It's probably a combination of everything. What it starts for me is that first thought of, that old feeling's back. Everything I thought I'd done well, I hadn't, obviously. Like it makes me think I've wasted X number of years. That was the lie. Feeling good was a lie. Here's the truth again, that everything sucks and I'm a loser. Here's the truth. There's no denying it. And I make the conscious, sometimes it used to be unconscious, now it's conscious. I'm gonna sit with this. I'm gonna dare my misery to see how far it will go. And in this period, it was because I was longing for like, live, Andy, come on, choose life. Like, that's really what I was longing for. I didn't realize it at the time, right? But that's why I ignored people that reached out until finally the noise coming back to me, the people go, hey, we need you, you're important, come. That got louder than my shittiest thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, as I said in the intro, like I stepped out of my emotional closet once again. Mm-hmm. For this period of depression I dealt with recently, it was very unemotional. I was this really flat defect. I was really out of my body, which wasn't my norm. I wasn't like sobbing and wailing. It wasn't this woe is me experience. It was just, I'm so apathetic. It's like I'm overdosing on my own apathy, and I couldn't be helped. And until I wanted to feel better, nobody could do anything. And that's what brings me the most shame, that so many people wanted to help me. And I just had this wall. I refuse to be helped. You're not gonna trick me again to thinking that life's good. I'm not falling for it again, because I was so caught in my own distorted thinking.
Yeah, and I think it can be, in a way, it can be dangerous to believe those people that things can get better. Someone once described trying to get better from depression like climbing an aluminum ladder out of hell. And it's like this idea of like, okay, it's one thing to just lie here flat on the ground and it stinks. Like as Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going. But at the same time, to climb rung after rung, and we're afraid we're getting higher and higher. And if I fall from this height, I'm not going to be able to handle that. Yeah. When people reached out to you, and were you sometimes nasty, or was it just more ignoring? Like, and what would you encourage for people? Like, how should people feel when people are, if you're reaching out to a person that you care about, you think they're a little bit off, and they're just not giving you anything back? What should people do?
So don't take it personally, like, because I'm ignoring people. Ignore what message? No, not going to. I would not even open. I would see like 15 messengers. I'm like, nope, not even. I know if I look at it, you'll tell I read it. I'm not even doing it. I'm giving zero back to the world. Some people reached out once and went away. Some people were persistent. Everyone's got to decide their own, where they're comfortable, but the persistent people finally broke through my walls. And, it takes a while for people to notice that you're not as active as you used to be on social media and things like that. So, month 2 or 3 of my isolation, it was silent. Then they might be like one person, hey, notice you're not around. And then it'd be 2 people a week. And it ended up being like up to 5 people a day, until I was like, all right, I can't keep ignoring. Like I ask for signs to be alive, and then I ignore the signs that come my way until they're so overwhelming. All right, I got to believe this. But never take it personally. The lack of response, from my lack of response, was entirely on my current energy level, mood, affect, outlook. Had nothing to do with the person. I don't believe there was one magic. If Oprah had emailed me, I would have ignored her, and my mom emailed me. Like I was just ignoring mode, because I had to hit my rock bottom. I had to be sick of feeling how sick I felt in order to respond to someone. And it began like when I was like, I'm doing kind of shitty, actually. Yeah, I'm not. I've been having a rough time, and that's for me, that's a sign that I'm getting better once I'm willing to engage with anybody. But yeah, don't take it personally. Keep trying, be persistent without being a nag. Like, again, you trust your own level. I'm still like, and I tell people, when someone pops in your head, there's a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I'm thinking of you. Like, those are the messages that connect with me and resonated. Just, hey man, I'm thinking about you. And when people started saying, when other people started telling me that they were worried about me,
Mm-hmm.
that was somehow really different. And that got me. I can tolerate my own judgment and bad thinking and planning and thinking I'm horrible. Somehow, when another human being mirrors back that they're worried about me, it like woke me up. It really made me, wow, how worried should they be? And am I worried about me? Wow.
But are there other times in your life where people telling you they were worried about you would have hit you as, oh, that means I'm a burden? Look at what I'm doing to these people, and I'm, like I'm burdening them that they have to worry about me. And is
Certainly in the past. So I've been on this ride enough times to know that, and again, I know it's going to end, but in the middle of it, I don't believe it's going to end,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. So yeah, in the past, there are times I truly believed, because I wanted myself to believe, I was better off dead, and that others would be worried less about me. Like, yes, Dan, you'll be upset when you hear the news that I've passed,
Mhm.
but in a month or two, you'll be over it, and you'll be better because you're not worried about me anymore.
Mhm.
So sometimes, yeah, again, the suicidal mind can distort any input into yet another reason to end your life,
Mhm.
and it's really important to recognize for me to recognize my distorted thinking and call it out for what it is. But it takes work. At age, my first attempt was about age 12,
Mhm.
and no one was going to help me. Like, I refused help. I thought I was so broken and hopeless and helpless. There was nothing anyone could do.
Mhm.
But I've had enough. I've risen out of the ashes often enough that I now know there's always something you can do.
Mhm.
And a big mistake is if you try one thing and you don't feel better or it doesn't last long, that you think, oh, that's all the solutions there are. I'm a loser. Nothing's going to help me. I'm always going to feel this way. It simply isn't true.
Well, and I think there's also, and in particular for people who are trauma survivors, I find that a lot of them are, if you don't believe you deserve to get better, that so many of the things will work against you.
Yeah.
So like what works in therapy? What have you found that works and doesn't work for you? And what any advice you would give to others as they're going into therapy, especially after they've been in that really dark place? Because it's not like you wake up the next morning and everything's perfect. You're just
Yeah.
you're kind of climbing back up the hill. But so any thoughts about how to best access therapy and utilize it for a person who's had that recurrent depression type thing?
Yeah. Until I wanted it, until I was engaged in my own therapy, I saw a child psychologist rather, at like age 13, 14, and I didn't want to feel better.
Hmm.
And I gave him enough. I'll tell you this. There. You can think you had a win, buddy. And like, I thought it was a game. I was very adversarial. I
Hmm.
wasn't going to give myself to anyone. Not until, as an adult, not until I've experienced enough life to know that, yeah, life is fucking awesome. And it can be magnificent. It is meant to be. This really is a gift. And when you get that, it, ah, that's what upsets me the most. I can know that and still doubt it. Not, I expect the healing. I expect the beauty. I expect it to last. When I was a depressed kid, I thought normal people were happy. Like, happiness was this flat plateau of just joyous living.
Hmm.
And realizing there's always ups and downs.
Hmm.
There's an emotional range no matter what. And the goal is higher highs and higher lows.
Hmm.
Right? Ideally, my emotional, mental, spiritual growth is like the stock market.
Hmm.
Even the lows are higher than the lows are higher than previous highs, right? So that's really what it comes down to for me is recognizing all of that. Once I'm willing to use a therapist, once I'm willing to hold nothing back, once I'm willing to open the curtain and go, here's everything that I think is shit and horrible about me. Is it? That's when true healing happens. For me, and I'm doing this now, the best therapy I have found is somatic.
Hmm.
It's not just, in the past, I've been in talk therapy, and it's like, why does it keep telling the same story? How is this going to help anything?
Hmm.
I've seen psychiatrists that you just saw them for 5 minutes and it was just, how the pills doing? All right, here's some more. And like for me, medication alone never got me anywhere except bad side effects.
Hmm.
Um, so if you're using antidepressive, if you're using anything, please talk to someone as well.
Hmm.
But the somatic stuff for me, and you mentioned trauma survivor, and I was molested as a kid, like age 5 and 6, and I haven't always, I didn't remember till I was like 20, and I thought, no, now that I remember that explains everything. Now I'm
Hmm.
fine, but there was still so much healing and unpacking to do,
Hmm.
and that's what I'm doing now. And the somatic therapy lets you just skip the trauma and kind of analyze the feelings and the defense mechanisms and how you survived, and realize how many of those things I'm still surviving based on this wounded 5-year-old.
Hmm.
And I'm retreating from life. I just, wow, what I've gone through recently is what I did as a kid when the molestation started.
But our subconscious is built to make us never feel the most awful pain that we ever felt before. And so from you, and so before you even knew who you were, when we're having these traumas happen so young, we're kind of like, it's almost like a tree that kind of grows sideways because it's on a mountain dealing with the wind. And so when that wind is there, we don't even realize some of the defense mechanisms that we're coming up with. We just, it's only when we're comparing ourselves to other people and say, why do I do this thing a little bit differently?
Yeah.
And so I think finding and engaging in the different kinds of therapy that are going to work for you. I'm just doing, and I'm going to unpack this on a later episode, but a seminar on cognitive processing therapy, which is a 12 session therapy, sounding very similar to what you're doing with the somatic therapy, where you're really facing not the trauma itself, but the outgrowth of that, the thought patterns and things like that that we do to deal with that. So for you, when if you were dealing with a friend, and one of the great gifts that you've given to your friends is letting them know that you have depression, so that they would take it maybe differently than if so many, especially men, would never let anyone know that they were ever struggling in that way. But let's say you had a friend and they were not responding. And like, how might you approach them after the second or third time that you just haven't gotten a response from a text or an email? Anything
Yeah.
that you would put in there, as you were reaching out, and how would you not take it personally?
One thing that happened this time was someone wrote me an actual piece of mail,
Mm,
and that impact, like, I it, I have it's right next to me still.
wow.
It was, yeah, exactly a month ago. Uh, a friend wrote to me saying so many people are concerned, so I'm reaching out, and it really connected. It was somehow that physicality was harder to ignore. It was real.
Hmm.
If I'm locally near someone, I would do a pop in. I
Mm,
would
okay.
go, get in front of someone, and really just, how are you, really, and give someone the chance to shut the door in my face or to fall apart
Hmm.
with whatever they bottled up. If I'm not near them, my last like message is, when you're ready to talk, I'm here.
Hmm.
And again, you're just I'm extending a hug, and I'm waiting for them to be ready to receive it. That's
Hmm.
really all I can do. Anything beyond that you risk, creating your own anxiety, and you don't want to add drama to a situation.
Hmm.
But and for friends I know who have been suicidal in the past, I'll might just send message, still thinking of you. I hope you're safe. If you're not safe, please reach out to me. And short, simple, not adding to the drama, not throwing a lot of big story, but just, again, offering love to someone who isn't yet ready to receive it, and being consistent with that.
Did you have any anxiety when you started to reconnect with some of those people who had reached out, that like, oh, maybe some of them will be frustrated with me or upset? And how did that actually go when you did reconnect with everyone?
It has all gone amazingly well and appreciated. And but yeah, I'm like, oh, again, the shame. Like, how can I be repeating this again? How am I doing this to people? But the people in my life are genuinely thrilled that I'm showing up again.
Yeah.
And it takes a while to receive that. I was in a podcast earlier, and the host introduced me and said, one of my personal inspirations, and I thought I was gonna just lose it. I'm barely functional. Like, how am I inspiring to anybody? But I really find that, especially for men, but all human beings, the more we're willing to be ourselves, to be vulnerable, to be authentic, it gives that same permission to everybody else.
Hmm.
I have so many people say things in private that they wouldn't say in a public post.
Hmm.
And we all long for connection. That, especially all these pandemic times and divisions and politics and everything else, separation creates depression and anxiety, and the natural cure for all of that is more connection. And and it's there. I find it's there for the taking. So the more you share yourself, the more people respond.
Have there been friends or family members who have needed more education about this? And where do you tell like people who you care about to like where should they go to get more education about loving someone, like having whether it be a friend, a family member, a cousin, whichever, who has depression? Where should they go to get more information about like how to not take these things personally? Or
Right.
should, like, did they need to get their own therapy or whatnot? Like when we care about someone who we're connected with, who goes through these highs and lows, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a great thing you bring up about getting your own therapy. Yeah, take care of yourself. Don't be so concerned about someone else that now you join them in the dumps. That doesn't help anybody. You want to be in a position of empowerment. It's offer a hand down, not get into the mud underneath someone and try to shove them up above and into the light, into feeling better again. It I shouldn't say it never works. It rarely works that I have seen. But take care of yourself. Know that again, good self-care, like everything, is kind of infectious. So
Hmm.
don't stop living your life because a family member, friend has kind of stopped living theirs,
Hmm.
right? I think I found NAMI to be very supportive and educational for
Hmm.
people kind of new to the mental health challenges and how to help people. There are support groups for everything
Hmm.
that let even meet online and stuff. So
Hmm.
you don't need to be in physical connection with someone. Um, the first time I attended a suicide survivors support group,
Hmm.
I thought it was for people that attempted suicide,
Hmm.
and it's for people who've lost people to suicide. So I went in
Right.
there and they introduced each other, and I'm like, these people are gonna hate me. This is gonna be horrible. Oh no! And then I forget. Well, I've lost friends to suicide. I've lost family members to suicide,
Hmm.
and the people in the class, it was mostly women who lost their sons because more men die by suicide than women do.
Hmm.
And the meeting ended up being amazing because women, moms, talk to me like I was their child.
Hmm.
And I tell people all the time, if you can't understand suicide, if you, why did they do it? I want to know. Like, be glad you don't know. Be glad it makes no sense. I wouldn't wish that understanding on anybody because I find the understanding only comes from your own experience.
Hmm.
So if you enjoy life so much, you can't contemplate, you can't fathom, there's just no rationality behind someone not wanting to live their life. Great, please celebrate that. Don't waste your time trying to dig into the muck of someone else's mind because it's distorted thinking. It's bad old habits that were again for me to survive a traumatic childhood
Hmm.
that I should have outgrown, but I clung to them. So get help for yourself, offer help to them, support, self-care, some education, but also I don't get too. I encourage people not to get too caught up in diagnoses and labels.
Hmm.
Just focus on I want you to feel better. What can I do?
Hmm. The most when I'm dealing with a client who it's their first recurrence of depression, a common thing that they'll say to me is, but if this is going to keep coming back, even if I get better again, what's the point?
Yeah.
So what would you say to them? What would you say to this person who, like, oh gosh, like I know I beat it once, but like, or I got, and so they're thinking of it in remission, but if this is going to keep coming back, is it worth it? What makes it worth it if it's going to potentially keep coming back?
Yeah. So it is worth it, and I've had that thought in every downtime, and that's for me. That's really a symptom of it too. Like
Hmm.
that I have what I call emotional tunnel vision.
Hmm.
When I'm good, like it'll always be good. This is fantastic.
Hmm.
And when I'm down, it'll always be this down. This is life.
Hmm.
And I think it's true for any suicidal person. We have that black and white thinking, that manic depression, that sharp line. It's black or it's white. Life is gray, and there is joy in the gray, in that in between. So, I find that why is it worth it? That's a signifier that I'm really at the bottom.
Hmm.
But some things I've done, I look at a calendar. I really look at a map, but I do journals. I have years of journals I can go back and look forward to. I'm like, well, I've had like 3 years that were fantastic, and now I've been down for a month.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think those 3 years are worth it. If I get through this month and there's 3 great years, like
Hmm.
what the hell? Yeah, those are great odds,
Hmm.
right? That's a great balance. So it is worth it. And suicidal thoughts feel so gross and uncomfortable because they're so unnatural.
Hmm.
So let that be proof to yourself too. Like it doesn't feel good. Um, lost it.
Oh, it's okay. But I often think again, like if we can view depression again, what I think often it's a chemical disorder in our brain. We're not producing and absorbing enough of a certain chemical. And when we think of diabetes, we're never feeling like a person shouldn't feel like a failure if they have a diabetic episode, if they have, low blood sugar or things like that. They should feel like, hey, maybe my sugar hygiene was off. Oh, and this could happen again if I'm not monitoring that, or maybe something in my body chemistry has changed.
Yeah.
So if I was doing all the things, and it's a process of looking back at what was I doing from a nutrition standpoint, and then what might be changing in me. And if we can view depression and other mental health issues the same way, then we can remove some of that shame from having a reoccurrence, and we can just say instead, let me go back to the things that used to work for me.
Yep.
The brain can never forget a strategy that has ever worked for it, and that's what you talk about. So, and unfortunately, those negative strategies, be it self-injury or gambling or addictions, like the brain never forgets. We just learn competing strategies.
Mm.
And when we have cravings, so if you have that dream about your fourth grade teacher, it doesn't mean you're going back to fourth grade. It just means you're at a level of stress and a level of suffering that might be reminding you of that. And so again, that idea of, so if do you ever find yourself going back and like saying, hey, back in my 20s after depression, rock climbing or something really worked for me. I haven't tried that in 15 years, but like, do you have like a list of the things that used to work, and or is that just in your journals? Like, how do you go back and decide, hey, this is one that I've put aside, or this is one I need to revisit?
Yeah. I'm usually I stop everything cold turkey,
Hmm.
and it's like again, especially this time, I made bad decisions. I'm stopped doing everything. I'm gonna treat myself like a cave. I'm gonna trap myself in the corner like an animal and see if I come out swinging or fall into misery.
Hmm.
And I fell into misery and apathy.
Hmm.
So wasn't a good plan. But I've been over the course of the last month, I've been adding things. Simplest thing to add, and something I've done for you, gratitude journaling.
Hmm.
Just, I'm so grateful today for XYZ. When I first began, it was a struggle to have one thing.
Hmm.
Then it was 3 things. Then it was 10. And then, I can write whole books about it. Right. Simple positive affirmations.
Hmm.
Poo-pooed it, thought it was nonsense fears. Then I did it. Like, oh, hey, I feel better. All right. I don't care about anything else except that I felt better.
Hmm.
Mirror work. Really just looking at us. I love saying positive affirmations into the mirror, really look in my own eyes.
Hmm.
Because when at my lowest and younger ages, I could not hold my own gaze. I would not look at myself. I thought I hated myself so much I couldn't do that. So I find that stating positive affirmations, saying good things about myself, and holding my own gaze, when I can't do it, that tells me where there's more pain and work to do.
Hmm.
I found a lot of people think positive affirmations should always feel good, but actually, when they're hard to say, that tells you that you're hitting a core truth, that's something to work on. And like, why can't I love myself? Why can't I say I'm worthy of things? Right. So much is our own worthiness of feeling better. And going back to chemistry, I don't know if it's my thoughts that make my chemistry, or that's my chemistry that makes my thoughts.
Hmm.
But when I was a kid and got diagnosed, it was just your chemical imbalance, Andy. Here,
Hmm.
try these pills. And it was given to me with no hope, no
Hmm.
timeline. I never met anybody that wanted to die and later didn't and was glad they survived. Like, those weren't things that were part of the explanation of what life might look like for me.
Hmm.
So take the big picture, but yeah, use what works, small little things, affirmations, gratitude journaling. These are all like free. Anyone can do these things. They're readily available. But then I got onto meditation, and meditation doesn't necessarily just mean sitting in a corner saying Om. It can just be focusing on your breath, 3 deep breaths enough to calm you. A meditation that's 30 seconds of just closing your eyes and being in silence and just trying to focus on your breath. It doesn't have to be hours long. Just start with small things that help you get present. Things like grounding and really just being outside in bare feet and just imagining imagining everything leaving your body into the earth, or imagining inhaling just the beauty of nature up into your body.
Hmm.
All sorts of just small little things. And I encourage people to just have their own experience
Hmm.
to see what works for you, as opposed to hearing about it, reading about it, go, oh, that's nonsense, that's silly. Journaling was recommended to me by therapists for years. I always equated it with like, oh, some little girl with her My Little Diary princess thing and unicorns. I'm like, I'm not doing that. That's silly. Then I did it and I felt better. So be
Well,
willing to be wrong and to feel better in discovering that you had wrong opinions about things.
Well, I think though that talks a little bit about that intersectionality between that male socialization and getting mental health support. and just that difficulty of some of the things that seems emasculine to do, to engage in some of the behaviors of acknowledging feelings, sitting with them, and doing that kind of thing. So, but that's one that you would say now, like that you've kind of let some of that go. What was one of the harder ones? Was that one of the harder ones to do, or anything else, or was it just admitting that you have feelings?
Yeah,
Like, which was the hardest part for you from a masculinity standpoint?
I say this often. Sometimes the hardest thing you will ever do in your life, and the bravest thing you'll ever do in your life, is to ask for help.
Hmm.
So journaling, affirmation, those are all things that you can keep private.
Hmm.
But during one of my early dark nights of the soul, when I was realizing I'm not good at living, not good at dying,
Hmm.
I'm open to something else.
Hmm.
And a message I got was like, share your story, share yourself,
Hmm.
and benefit will come out of the pain. So a willingness to trust that quieter voice. I find that the you should be dead, Andy, that's pretty loud. It's that
Hmm.
subtler, quieter thing that says, no, life's pretty good, man. You know, take that step. Do what you're afraid of. Mm.
You talked earlier about the idea of at first you thought you were just kind of like learning to sit with your sadness, but then you realized instead it was getting to a point that was kind of unhealthy. How will, as you go into your future, how will you determine the difference between healthy, just letting yourself be sad, and where it's getting to a point where it's like a little bit toxic, where you're kind of like wallowing in sadness and you're like keeping it onto yourself? So like, what is there anything that you've said as a message to yourself that you're like, I'm going to watch out for? Like, is it the suicidal ideation? What's going to be the red flag that's going to tell you this is where it's getting unhealthy as opposed to a healthy just sitting in your sadness?
So I find once we've done enough healing
Hmm.
that we are truly feeling the emotion of the moment,
Hmm.
it rises, you feel it, it moves, everything's good. So if I'm sad because of a poor experience I have talking to Dan,
Hmm.
then I'm sad. I let it go till it's done. If I realize I'm sad and it's building on judgment and I'm sad about things in the past, or I'm getting anxious and worried about something in the future, if my emotion is not related to right now, something's off.
Okay. And so, and would you then, do you plan on, do you think people who've had like, I personally, I don't think that anybody needs therapy forever. I think people go in and out of it as needed, at different time periods in their life. But do you feel so for yourself? Are you like you're saying? What other would you think? Okay, if I'm getting that sadness that's getting a little sticky, that would be an indication to re-enter therapy, or maybe do some other kind of work that would help with that. Like, or do you feel like for some people maybe they just always need therapy? Like, what thoughts do you have with that?
Again, trust your experience.
Hmm.
Are the fruits you're getting from any activity good? Are
Hmm.
you enjoying it? Keep doing it. Go
Yeah.
back to it. When a big thing for me when I discovered energy work, and it's been like 10 years of that, and like I felt better and different, and being talked through things, and opening myself to white light, and guided meditation. Like, oh my god, I thought I was just this meat suit, and
Hmm.
that my chemicals were broken, so I was screwed.
Hmm.
But discovering I'm more and having a spiritual aspect got me very excited. Does a lot of the healing. Every healing I do with clients is something I did for myself.
Hmm.
It benefited my life, so I learned how to do it to help others. But one thing I've done is like, aha, medical model bad. I'm just going to do this energy thing. This is the only thing that works.
Hmm.
This most recent time, again, I'm back in therapy as an active participant for the first time in probably 10 years.
Hmm.
And I have the maturity and the strength to look at things I never looked at before. So that's one thing that's very different. And to realize that even if it feels like we're treading the same ground, it's a deeper level.
Hmm.
There's a deeper healing. And, I used to think that healed something, you got treatment, like it was one and done.
Hmm.
And that just isn't true. As I said, being a human it's challenging.
Hmm.
And it being challenging doesn't mean you're ill or you're broken. It's like it's challenging to everybody.
Hmm.
But most people don't let anyone else know. We always wear these facades. I've got everything figured out. Everything okay. How you doing? Fine.
Yeah.
Satisfactory. Nothing. We have this mask of nonsensical bullshit, pretending we've all got it figured out to each other.
Hmm.
Until someone like me comes around and rips it off. And if you search my name on YouTube, you'll find dozens of videos of Andy crying somewhere during some sort of pain. And I do that because, I was better on the other side. Like, they're called a good cry for a reason.
Yeah. When I think, and I can only speak for myself personally, in seeing your vulnerability, I think that I know it touched me, And I think it touches a lot of people to say, yes, like this is like I'm not the only one who can sometimes have these feelings, and Andy being willing to show that. And I think it's your point about not doing any expecting any one thing to work. So if I have bad shoulder pain and I went to physical therapy years ago. Maybe I need to go back to physical. And if it's getting so bad, I can't sleep, I can't do whatever else. But just going to the physical therapy might not be enough. I might also have to look at, well, maybe it's partially my job. Maybe it's my chair that I'm sitting in. I need to, and maybe I need to. I also need to think about like, why do I want this shoulder to be better? Gosh, I want to play softball again. I want to do whichever else. So it's this combination of my why, my interaction, my relationships. So I would totally agree with your point of if anybody's ever trying to say, like, if you think the answer is going to be in a pill, the answer is never going to be in just one thing. We need to make sure we need to treat our health and ourself like in an integrated way and an aspect of all our life. I guess the last thing I would ask is so for you, for the people in your life, do you have a plan with any of them going forward of it? Like, so, hey, if this happens again with me, like I want a brother, a cousin, somebody else to like who knows to say check on me in a different way, or like do you have a manual somewhere like break glass in case of emergency if Andy's not answering, or like anything
Yeah.
else that you'd say like what to do should things come up again in the future?
A lot of people do have those plans. I've never been that person.
Hmm.
My wife, I've given her full permission to not accept it.
Hmm.
Like, let's have a fight.
Hmm.
Tell me, physically shove me out of bed. Because even at my worst, I would notice that I'd wake up. Oh, I dread the day.
Hmm.
If I make myself get 5 minutes into the day I dread, I'm already feeling better. I
Hmm.
just got to get past that momentum of apathy, the momentum of doing nothing is so strong for me when I'm down. I'm just like, yell at me, throw things at me, make me stand up. And, if we fight, then if I tell you I hate your guts, like, great, because 20 minutes later, I will be glad you did it.
Hmm.
So, give people permission to push hard if you've realized that's what you need.
Hmm.
Right. And it's the only, but if other people tried that, yeah. And it's hard to do that. Social media, electronic. Again,
Right.
my phone's broke. Go away.
Yeah.
It's like, but that, yeah, I do think that's important. Give people that you love permission to love you harshly when you need it.
Hmm. Well, Andy, this has been amazing. Is there where should people look to find you if they want to get more information about you and see more of the work that you're doing? Where should they look?
TheAndyGrant.com is the hub for all things me. You can find about books and coaching and healing work and the Real Men Feel podcast. It's all right there.
Okay, great. And I am so thankful that you've given us this time. Mariska's thankful. She's soothed. She's not even licking her paws, which all of you listeners know. If Mariska is licking her paws, that means we're not doing a good enough job in rating and reviewing the podcast. So remember to rate and review, send messages to Andy. If you have more questions for me, email me at daniel.magler@live.com and do whatever it takes to get you through this world. Just remember, you are not allowed to die.